In today's segment, we're looking at the most significant developments in information security, risk, ICT legislation and AI over the past week, with a special focus on what's happening right here in South Africa and across the African continent. An update on new NIST standards. Then we review historical cyber incidents that occurred on Christmas Day. This is Priviso Live. Welcome back to Priviso Live, your weekly magazine podcast on information security, risk, ICT legislation, and AI all the way from South Africa.
And welcome back, Lynn. I hear you took a couple of days to go away?
I did. To a place called Britannia Bay on the west coast next to St. Helena Bay. Very quiet, lots of time to stare at the sea and unwind. You need that sometimes. Unwind and catch up on sleep.
I'm always exhausted in the first week of December holiday, as if my body finally relaxes.
And I did, and read some books and walked on the beach. But podcasts don't record themselves, do they?
That's for sure. Well, the first major theme today is ransomware. A new industry analysis released this week shows that South Africa's ransomware exposure is getting worse, not better. The report highlights 6 trends that are pushing organizations into a risk space that the country's current policy environment is struggling to keep up with.
Exactly. What's worrying is that the trends are not abstract. They're operational. Poor patch cycles, inadequate backups, weak identity controls, and inconsistent monitoring were all flagged. And because South Africa remains one of the most targeted economies on the continent, the exposure is real. The report basically says if organizations do not modernize their detection and identity layers, they remain dangerously exposed.
And we're deep in the holiday period, with a lot of security teams thinning out, as we indicated last week. Attackers know this, so this kind of warning right now is not just academic, it's practical.
Completely. One of the key recommendations from the analysis was that South African companies need to treat ransomware not as an if, but as an expected operational interruption. That means resilient backups, resilient identity systems, and much quicker patching, especially with new strains that are hitting banks, manufacturing, and logistics.
On the legislative side, we've had an unusually dramatic week. The big news was South Africa's communications minister issuing a policy directive to ICASA that would allow equity-equivalent investment programs, or EEIPs, to substitute for the usual 30% black ownership requirement for telecom licensees.
And the timing is interesting because this is being widely viewed as directly linked to the Starlink debate. South Africa's ownership rules have effectively kept Starlink out of the market, and this directive seems to be aimed at creating a legal workaround.
That's where the political fallout has been intense. The ANC publicly criticized the minister this week, saying the directive undermines the transformation framework and oversteps the separation between policymaking and regulation. Meanwhile, the presidency pushed back and said there was nothing unlawful in the directive.
So you've got political pressure on one side, legal debates on another, and industry trying to figure out what it means for licensing.
Exactly. And the Telecoms Industry Association, ACT, released a statement this week saying they support the principle, but execution is going to be everything. If the directive is not implemented carefully, it could create regulatory uncertainty in an already complex market.
On the risk and governance front, South Africa's information regulator continues to receive a rising number of breach notifications. Another analysis this week highlighted thousands of reported incidents in 2024 and 2025 so far.
This doesn't mean more breaches necessarily. It partly means organizations are finally using the mandatory Papaya e-portal to report incidents.
And it also means more visibility. For years, we suspected the breach numbers were high, but we had no data. With the portal, we're finally seeing the scale, and it's significant. The biggest categories are still credential compromises, email account takeovers, and supply chain breaches.
Which again comes back to fundamentals. Secure your identity infrastructure, enforce MFA properly, and watch your vendors carefully.
Switching to AI governance, there's still no dedicated AI law in South Africa, but several legal commentaries this week emphasize something important. AI is not unregulated. It sits under existing frameworks like POPIA, cybersecurity rules, discrimination laws, IP frameworks, and contract law.
And the lack of a standalone AI statute is becoming more noticeable now that the EU, US states, and even some African countries like Kenya are moving faster on AI-specific regulation.
So where does that leave local organizations?
The practical approach, for now, is to create internal AI governance frameworks, especially covering data provenance, model usage, employee use of generative AI, and AI risk disclosures.
Boards are starting to ask for this, and rightly so.
Looking beyond South Africa, a continental threat intelligence review published this week highlights something quite stark. AI-driven cyber attacks are increasing across Africa, with Ethiopia and Nigeria facing the highest weekly assault rates.
Who have they been targeting?
Mostly banking, telecoms, and energy. Attackers are using AI-automated scripts, faster phishing kit generation, and enhanced credential attacks. Many of these regions are still early in rolling out cybersecurity frameworks, so the gaps are wide.
It reinforces the need for cross-border collaboration. Africa cannot treat cyber threats as isolated national issues. Attackers certainly don't.
So let's wrap it with practical takeaways for South African security and risk leaders this week. Ransomware risk is escalating. Refresh backups, enforce MFA aggressively, and monitor identity anomalies.
Legislative uncertainty is increasing in the ICT sector. The Starlink EEIP directive could reshape licensing. Legal and compliance teams need to track developments closely.
POPIA breach reporting volumes are rising. Organizations must tighten email security, supply chain controls, and breach response playbooks.
AI governance cannot wait for legislation. Implement internal AI usage, privacy, and risk frameworks now.
Africa's cyber threat surface is widening. Expect more AI-driven attacks, especially in finance, energy, and telecoms.
Don't wait until the 22nd of December to lock down access, check backups, or reinforce your SOC coverage.
Looking more broadly, NIST, the US National Institute of Standards and Technology, has released several major draft standards over the past few days, and they're worth paying attention to.
Absolutely, Lynn. The biggest one is the preliminary draft of the NIST Cybersecurity Framework Profile for Artificial Intelligence. This is essentially an extension of CSF 2.0, but focused specifically on AI risk, how to secure AI systems, how to govern them, and how to use AI responsibly inside cybersecurity operations.
And it's very relevant for South Africa because, as we said earlier, we don't have a dedicated AI Act yet. Organizations here rely on POPIA, existing cybersecurity standards, and internal governance. NIST's draft gives companies a blueprint, data provenance, model security, access control around AI tools, and how to manage AI-generated threats. It's open for public comment until late January.
So this really becomes a practical guide for local companies building AI programs, even while our own regulatory environment is still forming.
Exactly. And that's not the only draft NIST pushed out. We also saw an update to SP 800, 70 Revision 5, the Security Checklist Guide. This is all about modernizing secure configuration baselines. A lot of South African organizations still rely on outdated hardening checklists. So this update is a step forward in aligning with current attack patterns.
There's also a new public draft of SP 857 Part 1 Revision 6, which covers cryptographic key management. This is important for banking, fintech, energy, and any regulated sector in South Africa or Africa. Key management is one of the most common weaknesses we see in security assessments, and attackers continue exploiting old or improperly rotated keys.
So 3 major drafts, all dealing with AI, configuration security, and cryptography. What should organizations be doing with this?
First, download the drafts and review them. Even though they're US standards, South Africa's financial, telecom, and public sector ecosystems lean heavily on NIST. These will influence procurement, cloud contracts, and vendor standards.
Second, start mapping your internal AI controls to the new draft AI cybersecurity profile. Don't wait for a South African AI Act. Good governance needs to start now.
And finally, use the holiday period to update policies and secure configuration baselines. Attackers are adopting AI fast. Our defenses need to evolve just as quickly. Now we thought it would be a good moment to look at some of the most interesting information security and AI-related events that have happened on or around Christmas Day over the last few decades. Cybercriminals do not take a break for Christmas, and the history is actually quite fascinating.
And Lynn, what's striking is that some of the earliest malware ever written had a Christmas theme. One of the very first global email worms, the Christmas tree exec worm, hit academic networks back in December 1987. It displayed a cheerful ASCII Christmas tree and then proceeded to email itself to everyone in your contact list. It slowed BitNet and the early internet to a crawl. So even in the 80s, festive social engineering was a thing.
Exactly. Then the following year, in 1988, we saw the Father Christmas worm, which hit DECnet systems and sent a message from Father Christmas, while quietly propagating across thousands of nodes. It wasn't destructive, but it showed how a seasonal theme could bypass user suspicion. If it looks friendly and festive, people click it.
Fast forward to the modern era, and Christmas Day has become a high-risk window for big platforms. Think of the PlayStation Network outage in 2009, which ruined Christmas gaming plans for millions, and of course the infamous 2014 DDoS attacks by Lizard Squad, which took down both Xbox Live and PSN for most of Christmas Day. What a day to get an Xbox as a gift!
Those attacks were a critical lesson for the industry. The holiday period is when attackers know staffing levels are minimal, monitoring is lighter, and user load is at its peak. Perfect storm conditions.
And it's not just entertainment platforms. The Target breach became public in the Christmas week of 2013. That was one of the largest retail breaches in history. 40 million card numbers stolen. Attackers had been inside for weeks, but they used year-end distraction to operate freely.
We see the same pattern almost every year. Ransomware spikes between 22 and the 28th of December. Delivery-themed phishing attacks pretending to be DHL, FedEx, or the post office, gift card scams targeting finance teams on leave, and DDoS attacks on gaming and streaming services.
And the AI dimension is becoming more important. In the last few years, AI-generated scams have exploded during Christmas. Everything from fake courier delivery updates to cloned voices of family members asking for emergency money while traveling. Attackers know people are distracted and emotionally primed.
We also saw a big spike in privacy concerns over Christmas the past few years because of apps like Lensa AI. Millions of people uploaded photos during the holidays to make AI avatars, without realizing they were feeding biometric data into unknown models. December has become a major risk period for consumer-grade AI use.
That's our look back at Christmas cybersecurity history. It's a fun topic, but also a reminder that security doesn't sleep, even when Santa does and cybercriminals don't take leave. We hope you found today's episode interesting. If you did, please share it with your colleagues, your friends, your family. Word of mouth is a strong driver of podcast growth.
If you want to hear more of the same, subscribe to Priviso live on Apple, Samsung, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or YouTube. And if you need security, risk, or ICT legislation advice, contact Priviso Consulting directly at admin@priviso.co.za.
And if you have topics you'd like us to cover or questions about anything we discussed today, reach out to us. We love hearing from our listeners.
Thanks for listening.
Stay
secure.
safe, everyone.
Happy holidays, everyone. Stay safe, stay curious, and take the time to unwind.
Take care, and we'll see you next week when we look at the AI blunders of 2025.